For decades, Silicon Valley has been the epicenter of tech startups and venture capital. Every year, thousands of entrepreneurs from all over the world travel to San Francisco hoping to find venture capitalists to fund their startup ideas. One of the most important venture capital firms in Silicon Valley is Y Combinator. Y Combinator is an early-stage venture capital firm. It provides seed funding to young entrepreneurs to get their startup ideas off the ground. Y Combinator has funded thousands of tech startups over the years. Some of them went on to become household names, including Airbnb, Reddit, and Twitch, just to name a few. Since its founding in 2005, Y Combinator has funded over 4,000 startups. Many of these companies have gone on to become direct competitors to each other. As we will see shortly, this has led to some pretty strange situations. In 2017, Y Combinator invested in a startup called Rippling. Rippling makes human resources and payroll software. 2 years later, they funded another startup called Dell. Dell also makes HR-related software. Both companies have become very successful, with Rippling achieving a $13.5 billion valuation and Dell achieving a $12 billion valuation in subsequent funding rounds. Rippling and Dell's software are very similar. They help companies manage their employees, recruiting efforts, and payroll. Rippling and Dell are thus direct competitors. In March of 2025, Rippling filed a lawsuit against Dell, accusing them of stealing valuable trade secrets with a human spy. What's described in the lawsuit is a case of corporate espionage that would not look out of place in a James Bond screenplay. In this video, we'll delve into what is perhaps the most brazen and shocking espionage case in the history of Silicon Valley. Rippling and Dell create HR software used by large and medium-sized businesses to manage and pay their employees. Every year, Rippling spends millions of dollars advertising their software to potential customers. They mostly use digital advertising channels such as LinkedIn and Google search ads. Enterprise sales practices are different from consumer sales. For example, let's say you see an ad for a pair of shoes on Facebook. You might decide to buy those shoes then and there. The sales cycle is very short. Now let's suppose you're an HR professional working for a large corporation. You see an ad for Rippling's HR software on LinkedIn. You might click on the ad and get in contact with a Rippling salesperson. You'll ask a lot of questions, maybe for a product demo, etc. It could take weeks or even months before you ultimately sign a deal. This is considered a sales lead, a potential customer that is interested in the product but has not yet made the purchase. The list of sales leads is extremely valuable. These are prospective customers who have a very strong buying intent. Rippling keeps very detailed records about its sales leads. Rippling's salespeople conduct extensive research about each prospective customer to identify their specific HR needs and tailor the sales pitch accordingly. In many cases, the prospective customer is already using a competing HR software. Perhaps they are unhappy with their current software. That's why they're considering switching to Rippling. In fact, this is so common that Rippling created so-called battle cards, which they provide to their salespeople. The term battle card is a bit misleading, as it's actually a PowerPoint presentation. They have one battle card for each of their competitors. The battle card is a template for a sales pitch, explaining why Rippling is superior to the competitor. For example, if a prospective customer is currently using Workday, the Rippling salesperson can pull out the Workday battle card, which explains why Rippling is better than Workday. The battle cards are continuously updated as Rippling salespeople learn new information about their competitors. One of the competitors for which Rippling maintains a battle card is Dell. Obviously, Dell would very much like to see this battle card. This would show them how they can improve their products and compete more effectively against Rippling. In addition to landing new customers, an equally important task is to maintain existing customers. Rippling constantly monitors its existing customers to identify any difficulties or complaints they might have. They want to keep their customers happy so they don't defect to a competitor. To this end, Rippling has many internal Slack channels where they talk about issues their current customers are facing and how to resolve them. Rippling maintains a list of dissatisfied customers who are at high risk of leaving. This is called the churn risk list. Access to these internal Slack channels or the churn risk list would be very valuable to any of Rippling's competitors. If a specific customer has complaints about Rippling's software, that provides a perfect opportunity for a competitor to try to steal that customer away. In June of 2023, Rippling's Dublin office hired a man named Keith O'Brien, who had prior experience in payroll software. He was a reasonably high-ranking employee and was hired as a middle manager. O'Brien is the alleged spy. While O'Brien was hired in June of 2023, he did not begin his espionage immediately. It wasn't until November of 2024, more than a year later, that his alleged espionage began in earnest. It's likely that he was recruited by Dell after he was already working for Rippling. It's probably easier to recruit an existing employee as a spy instead of recruiting a spy and then trying to get him a job at Rippling. Rippling uses the communication software Slack for internal communications. Every employee has a unique Slack account. There is a record of everything you do on Slack, which can be viewed by an administrator. Beginning in November of 2024, O'Brien started making numerous searches for the word deal in Rippling's internal Slack channels. Sometimes he would make over 100 such searches in a single day. Here's an example of what O'Brien would have found when he searched for deal. Here we can see that a Rippling salesperson offered a discount to a prospective customer. This prospective customer was an existing client of Deal. This information is very valuable to Deal. Knowing that this customer is about to defect, Deal can contact them offering an even better discount if they stay. If you want to see what's being discussed in a Slack channel, there are two options. You can join that Slack channel or you can preview it. When you join a Slack channel, a notification is given to existing members of the channel. If you preview the channel, no such notification is given. O'Brien feared that it would look suspicious if he is randomly popping into a bunch of different Slack channels. He used the preview option to fly under the radar. In the normal course of business, it's unusual to use the preview option. We can see here O'Brien did far more preview searches compared to other Rippling employees. His activity on Slack was highly suspicious. In addition to searching for deal, O'Brien frequently viewed Slack channels related to high-intent customer leads. These included discussions about prospective customers that were very close to signing a deal with Rippling. Such information is very valuable to Deal, as they can attempt to poach these high-intent prospects. He also monitored Slack channels discussing Rippling's existing customers that were believed to be at high risk of churn. This information is valuable to Deal for the same reason. In addition to trying to poach Rippling's customers, Deal allegedly also tried to poach Rippling employees. At least 17 Rippling employees were contacted by Deal and given unsolicited job offers. Deal allegedly received these employees' contact information from O'Brien. Here's a screenshot from a Rippling employee's WhatsApp account. He was contacted by Deal's COO, Dan Westgarth. Westgarth wanted to hire this Rippling employee. He was very persistent, attempting to call him or her twice despite not receiving any response. In January of 2025, a San Francisco-based publication called The Information published an article entitled "Deal Accused of Money Laundering, Sanctions Failures in Lawsuit." The article discussed Deal's alleged dealings with sanctioned Russian entities. The article was written by a journalist named Michael Rodin. Rodin contacted representatives of Deal for comments about the story. Interestingly, a Deal representative suggested to Rodin that their competitor Rippling may actually be the one who's violating Russian sanctions. They provided Rodin with screenshots of Rippling's internal Slack channels to substantiate this allegation. In February of 2025, Rodin approached representatives of Rippling to inquire about the story. He showed them the Slack messages he had received from Deal. Both Rippling and Deal denied violating any US-imposed sanctions against Russia or any other country. I have no idea whether any of these sanction evasion allegations are true, but that's besides the point. By investigating the sanctions story, Rodin had inadvertently alerted Rippling to the presence of a spy in their midst. Deal had somehow managed to obtain screenshots from Rippling's internal Slack channels. Only Rippling employees have access to the internal Slack, so Deal must be receiving information from an insider. Rippling conducted an analysis of the Slack messages provided by Rodin. All of the messages included searchable keywords, including Russia, Belarus, Iran, and Syria. These countries are subject to US sanctions. This could not have been done by accident. A Rippling employee must have been specifically searching through the internal Slack channels to find any possible dealings Rippling may have had in sanctioned countries. In other words, a Rippling employee was going through great pains to find incriminating information against his own employer. So why would Deal want to expose sanctions violations on the part of Rippling? Perhaps they wanted to muddy the waters and divert attention away from their own alleged sanctions evasion. Remember that during this time, the Information was actively investigating Deal. This reporting could result in severe reputational or even legal problems for Deal. Rippling is able to analyze the activity of all of its employees' Slack accounts. There is only one employee who had made these types of searches, Keith O'Brien. Once Rippling started analyzing O'Brien's Slack account, they quickly found out about the suspicious Deal searches as well. They were pretty sure O'Brien was a spy, but at this point they only had circumstantial evidence. There was no smoking gun that could definitively connect O'Brien to Deal, so they continued their investigation. They found that in December of 2024, O'Brien had an email correspondence with an email address called alex@deal.com. This email account belongs to Alex Boozies, Deal's CEO. O'Brien used his personal email to contact Boozies, not his work email. But he logged into his personal email from his company-issued computer. Thus, Rippling was able to analyze what he was typing in his web browser even though they could not directly access his personal email account. Rippling was not able to read the contents of the email. They only knew that O'Brien had some form of correspondence with Deal's CEO. At this point, Rippling was almost certain O'Brien was a spy. but they still lacked a smoking gun. Just because he had contact with Dell's CEO doesn't prove any wrongdoing in and of itself. There are legitimate reasons why the two men might have been in contact. Perhaps Dell was trying to poach O'Brien as an employee. That would be completely legal and is not proof of spying. After all, we know that Dell attempted to poach multiple Rippling employees in the past. So Rippling came up with a plan to prove O'Brien's guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. On March 3, 2025, Rippling's general counsel sent a letter to 3 individuals: Philippe Bouzis, who is Dell's chairman, CFO, and the father of Dell's CEO; Spiros Komis, Dell's head of US legal; and thirdly, an unnamed lawyer working for an external law firm that represents Dell. Here's the letter. It's addressed to a Mr. Distelberger. I believe this to be Eric Distelberger, a lawyer working at the San Francisco office of a law firm called Paul Hastings. This is presumably the external counsel hired by Dell, although I am not certain of this. The letter reads as follows: While I appreciate Dell's ongoing fascination with Rippling's hires, and especially a couple of Dell defectors, rest assured Rippling does not want Dell's confidential information. Dell defectors refers to 2 former Dell employees who now work for Rippling. Presumably, Dell had previously contacted Rippling complaining about the poaching of these 2 so-called defectors. But since you wrote, I wanted to raise our concerns. For starters, as Dell is surely aware, an employee whose name is redacted no longer works here because of Dell. The redacted name presumably belongs to one of the so-called defectors. This Dell defector no longer works at Rippling. The letter includes a screenshot of a Slack message written by Matt Plank, Rippling's chief revenue officer. Plank says, quote, "Just learned a few crazy things in the D-Defectors channel. I learned the real reason why Redacted left. Dell canceled all of his vested equity because he joined Rippling. C-Suite at Dell called him and basically said, you chose Rippling, so you're not going to get any of your equity, and then gave the equity back to him when he resigned from Rippling. Apparently, Dell has been pressuring its former employees not to work for Rippling." The ostensible purpose of this letter was to complain to Dell about their heavy-handed practices, but the real purpose was very different. In the message, Plank refers to a Slack channel called D-Defectors, which stands for Dell Defectors. This is a Slack channel where Rippling discusses issues related to employees they had poached from Dell. Perhaps it may also contain discussions of Rippling's plans to poach more of Dell's employees in the future. Dell was very interested to see what was being discussed in this channel. Just a few hours later, Keith O'Brien used his company's Slack account to access the D-Defectors Slack channel. As it turns out, the D-Defectors channel was a hoax. The channel indeed existed, but it was only created that morning. The channel was empty. It was created for the sole purpose of identifying the spy. The only people who knew about the D-Defectors Slack channel were Rippling's general counsel and a few other senior executives who helped orchestrate this trap. And of course, the 3 Dell executives who received the letter also knew about it. The only way O'Brien could have known about the D-Defectors channel is if he was told by Dell. This proves that O'Brien was taking orders from Dell. Shortly thereafter, Rippling obtained an order from an Irish court ordering O'Brien to refrain from destroying any incriminating evidence. The court sent a solicitor to Rippling's Dublin office to serve O'Brien the court order. The solicitor explicitly warned O'Brien not to delete anything on his phone. This would be considered as destroying evidence, which is a criminal offense. O'Brien said he needed to go to the bathroom. In the bathroom, he deleted numerous files from his cell phone. He then fled the premises and eventually destroyed his cell phone. Dell has denied any wrongdoing, and the legal case is ongoing. O'Brien was quickly apprehended by the Irish authorities. Upon his arrest, he did not confess to espionage, but did admit to destroying his cell phone. He explained, quote, "I had a breakdown. Over the weekend there's been a witch hunt for me. I'm very concerned about my well-being and safety," unquote. If Rippling's allegations are true, this is one of the most brazen cases of corporate espionage in recent history. Perhaps it also shows us how crowded the enterprise software space has become. Silicon Valley has created thousands of software companies, many of whom offer very similar products. An ever-increasing number of software companies are competing for a limited pool of customers. The intensity of the competition has perhaps driven some of them to resort to underhanded tactics. Remember that both Rippling and Dell received their seed funding from the same venture capital firm Y Combinator. They were funded just 2 years apart. This shows a lack of creativity on the part of venture capital. They fund the same old ideas over and over again. That's how they fund 2 companies that are so similar to each other that their main focus is to steal the other's employees and customers. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video. What do you think about the Rippling Dell espionage? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next one. Wall Street Millennial, signing out.